And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Benched with Bubba, episode 758, coming at you on a Thursday. A little over 2 weeks of baseball is in the books, give or take, as we're recording today. We're going to talk about some the panic meter in regard to hitters, because there's some very, very slow starts, let's say, around baseball right now. So to help me talk about said hitters and what we should be doing with these hitters, you can find him over on the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast. He writes for CBS Fantasy. He's on Twitter at roto_Frank. Frank Stampfl, how we doing, my friend?
I am doing very well, Bubba. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me, and happy to say the only person I've ever been to a World Series game with in my life is Bubba. How about that?
Yep. Frank flies in, got a seat next to me. We watch it. That's how we first met each other in person. It was like, yeah, let's watch a ball game together and watch the Rangers clinch it in Arizona. So first pitch Arizona, everybody. Always fun. But how you been, man? What do you got going on at CBS these days besides busy?
Yeah, everything's going well. Obviously, wish the weather was a little bit nicer here in the Northeast, but such is April weather. It's cold, it's rainy right now. But in terms of fantasy, it's a mixed bag. It's early in the season. We have to remind listeners and fantasy players, as well as ourselves, that it is still so early on in the season, and it is a very, very long season. So stick with it. Trust the process. If you want to find my work, it's mostly on the podcast side of things, but Fantasy Baseball Today, we go live Sunday through Thursday evenings. It's in your podcast audio feed Monday through Friday mornings. We also have a shorter podcast, Fantasy Baseball Today Express. But yeah, FBT and FBT Express, that's where you can find most of my work there.
Yeah, the award-winning shows that Frank does over there at CBS, getting it done as always. Let's talk about some of this news first. It's been a slew of injury news to start the season, but that's kind of, if we take a step back, it's kind of how it is every season. And then it kind of slowly peters out. Like Ryan and I were talking about it on Thursdays, because I do news all the time. And he goes, how's it going? And I'm all, in reality, it seems bad because it's big names that are affecting our teams, but it's basically par for the course this time of the year. So we'll start with Wyatt Langford, who goes to the IL with an oblique injury, suffered an oblique injury during spring training. He says this isn't that bad. We know players tell the truth all the time, Frank. How are you feeling on this one when it comes to Wyatt Langford?
Yeah, this one's a little bit confusing because my first impression was, okay, it's not the same oblique that he was dealing with earlier on in spring training. So I thought, okay, this is probably a good thing. But then you think more about it and you're like, well, he's now dealt with injuries to both of his obliques already within the first month of the season. So it is a little bit worrisome, obviously. I just hope the Rangers do the right thing like they did here, put him on the IL. Yes, it might take some time, but take that time. It's early in the season. I'd rather you keep him out for a month, and if that will, allow him to rest up and come back 100% healthy and we can have him for the rest of the season, I would rather do that than have him come back in, let's say, 2 weeks or a minimum IL stay, and then next thing you know, he winds up re-injuring this. Because, as you know, Bubba, obliques can be very, very tricky. So take the time, rest up. Looking at the Rangers roster here in terms of, how they're going to replace him, it looks like they can put Josh Smith in the outfield. They recalled Dustin Harris, who has actually put up some interesting numbers in the minors. I would like to see what he can do with regular playing time. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think he's a name just to watch in very deep leagues in case he does begin to gain some playing time here. Again, that was Dustin Harris with the Rangers.
Yeah, that's a great call, because I was looking at him when I saw it's who they called up for him, and then I kind of started to remember, wait, he got a cup of coffee last year. Dustin Harris was up, and it wasn't great, and literally it was like a cup of coffee. It was 1 or 2 games. It was in, it was out. But yeah, in the past, he's been a 10 to 15 home run guy with some speed, decent batting average. So I'm with you. It'd be interesting to see how that plays out. Evan Carter is the name everybody wanted, but he already got hurt. Hit by a pitch, I believe, on Wednesday. So he's day-to-day. We'll see how that one plays out. And he was struggling anyways. It was bad at AAA. So, yeah, Harris seems to be the guy for now. It's interesting that Josh Smith is moving to the outfield now. The guy's going everywhere. We'll see how that pans out. But this Rangers team as a whole is struggling at the plate. And it'd be great if they could pick it up somewhere, because we'll talk about at least 1 or 2 of them later on in the show. Justin Steele. This one kind of came as a surprise when he actually, the first 2 starts a little rough on the road. It was Arizona and then in Sacramento. A good offense, a bad ballpark. So kind of grains of salt there. Goes to Wrigley, throws really well, it seemed. But now he's on the IL with elbow tendonitis, Frank. And he said he was pitching with it for the last couple of innings of his start, which is not ideal. So what are our thoughts on Justin Steele? I know we can't drop him right away until we get more news, but the initial impacts here does not sound great.
Yeah, anytime you hear elbow, anything arm related with a pitcher, it's, sets off a light bulb. And me especially, it's like sometimes I get really emotional with this stuff, and I have to keep myself grounded as well. But we'll remind people he dealt with his injury last year in September. He came back in a minimum stay, and he made a couple starts towards the end of the season. Now, again, it's not great that he's dealing with the same injury 2 years in a row to his elbow, but the fact that he returned last year and still made a couple of starts, and the last start he made was his best start of the season this year, and he was still kind of pitching through that. So, of course, it's worrisome for any pitcher that deals with an arm injury. But I think you just kind of wait it out here. Hopefully they give him the time that he needs as well. I don't really see a great replacement on the Cubs. They probably go with like a Colin Ray or like a Jordan Wicks, something like that. So no, not really exciting on the Cubs part of things. I'm not dropping Justin Steele. I'm holding on to him, but yeah, the fact that he's dealt with this 2 years in a row and it's an arm injury, it's pretty concerning.
Yeah, I hope similar to what you said with Langford, like it's early, make sure he's ready when he comes back. Let's not do this anymore. But then again, you would expect him to have been ready to enter spring training. So really interested to see where this one goes going forward. Pablo Lopez left his start with a hamstring injury. The MRI showed a grade 1 strain, which is the minimum. That's a plus. So he should be out 2 to 3 weeks, give or take, barring anything crazy happening, Frank. David Festa got the call. He's going to start Friday for the Minnesota Twins. Everybody wanted Zebby. Let's not forget both these guys are pretty darn good prospects when all things are said and done. First off, I think Pablo, we're just going to wait and see. But Festa, how are we feeling on this? If we're in a daily acquisition league, or even obviously you'll see how he pitches on Friday before Sunday Fab comes around. But what are your expectations for Festa?
I think there's going to be a lot of strikeouts. I think there could be some frustrating starts. He does struggle with, fly balls and home runs and things like that. But in a small sample last year, it was a lot of swinging strikes for him. I think he's got good stuff. He's really in this mold of Twins pitcher where he's a bigger guy. He gets good extension, doesn't throw with big velocity, but he's someone that throws that fastball up in the zone. It's very much so like a Bailey Ober and a Joe Ryan. These are the types of pitchers that they've produced over the past couple of years. And I think Festa could be another one like that. I think in deeper leagues, I would be looking at him and just speculate and see what happens here ahead of Friday's start. If it goes disastrous, okay, you could drop him, move on to the next type thing. In a shallower format, I think he's a name to watch for now. I really was hoping for Zebby Matthews, which is so interesting because I wrote up Festa as a sleeper back in January, and then by the time spring training rolls around, Zebby looks great and the velocity's up and he's got this great, K to walk ratio, and I'm just like, all right, let me throw David Festa to the side. It's time for Zebby Matthews. But the way that their rotation is set up right now, I still think we could see Zebby Matthews pretty soon in that rotation. Wow. Chris Paddock has been a disaster. Simeon Woods-Richardson has not been very good. So even once Pablo is back, I think there are still spots in the rotation where they can maybe get out some of these struggling guys, bring in the youngsters. I would still look to stash Zebby Matthews, hold on to him if you have him on your team. But in some of those deeper leagues, let's add David Festa for now and see how he does here on Friday.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think we'll see both these guys as a staple in this rotation sooner than later, barring very poor production. I think this was more of just how things worked out because Festa was ready to go on Friday. Zebby wouldn't be ready till Sunday. I think it's just kind of what the Twins needed in theory. That's how I'm going to tell myself, but that's why they picked Festa first. But they're both very good. I'm with you. I think keep stashing if your people are stashing Zebby because it shouldn't be. It should only be 1 or 2 more Paddock starts, I'd imagine, before they have to make that decision. Zach Eflin to the IL with a lat strain. He's going to be shut down for a week before being reevaluated. That sounds like a 3 to 4 week type situation for me, unless they get very fortunate on that reevaluated situation. They have not named a starter yet. On Thursday, as we record, Kyle Gibson made his final rehab start, so he will be the guy that eventually takes the spot. Who knows who pitches this weekend? But if you're Zach Eflin manager, how are we feeling on that?
Yeah, I think this one's a little bit troublesome, worrisome as well, because last year he dealt with a shoulder thing and he was shut down for a little bit. I think it was actually a minimum IL stay as well. So it wasn't, the most worrisome last year, but the fact that he's dealt with a shoulder/lat type thing 2 years in a row is a little bit concerning for Zach Eflin. He's not someone who relies on crazy velocity or anything like that, but you need everything to be right because he needs to hit his spots. And obviously he doesn't walk anyone. He really needs to be precise in the way that he throws. For the Orioles, I mean, this is kind of a disaster right now. They have so many injuries to their pitching staff. They missed out on the big names in free agency. They did not bring back Corbin Burns, though they did try. I kind of want to set the record straight because like we were very harsh on the Orioles. They did try to bring Corbin Burns back, but it seems like he more so wanted to be in his, home state of Arizona. And that's where he opted to go there. But they just don't really have much depth. So I think it's Kyle Gibson at some point here. I don't think he's very good for fantasy. We kind of have an idea. He's a break glass in case of emergency, stream in the right matchup. But, he's had, ERAs well over 4, closer to 5 the past couple of years. So don't really have much interest in Kyle Gibson and hoping that we do get Zach Eflin back sooner rather than later. I would still hold on to him just because I think when he's at his best, it's a serviceable ERA and a really good whip. So I'd be looking to hold on Zach Eflin.
Yep, very, very solid arm. I'm holding till at least we get more news after the 7-day period. That's what I want to hear what they have to say there, because maybe it's a short stint, like you said, and maybe it's nothing too crazy there. Last bit of news I have here is Spencer Arrighetti. We know the freakish thumb injury that he took place, the fractured thumb, but which is just bizarre world. We always get something fun with some of these injuries. But the Astros came out and said he will not require surgery, which is a plus, big plus, which means he'll probably be back sometime in June instead of if he had surgery, more like All-Star break. So my question to you, Frank, and this maybe pertains more to like NFBC folks that don't have ILs, are you stashing a Spencer Arrighetti until June and is April 10th right now?
Yeah, that is a tough one. And I think it's team dependent. I think there is context required here for Spencer Arrighetti, because if you are dealing with other injuries or you were stashing other players, it gets really tough to stash multiple guys on your bench. And the way that I typically like to round out my NFBC bench is I like to cover at least each position in terms of the hitters, like have one outfielder, one corner, one middle on my bench. So 3 of my bench spots I usually like to dedicate to hitters, and then the rest usually to pitchers. And whether that's, one reliever spec, maybe it's one prospect stash, maybe it's a couple of guys with, you're just playing the matchups and you're keeping those guys on your bench, but you run out of these bench spots fast. So it comes down to your league context. If you don't have anyone else that's injured, you're not stashing other prospects, I would try to hold on to Arrighetti as long as possible, because he's someone I did like as a breakout this season. And if you look at the second half of last year and what he did, he got big whiffs. I think it was 3 pitches with a whiff rate over 40%. He pitches on a good team, should have run support. And the Astros pitching development in general is really good. I mean, they did a great job with Hunter Brown, and obviously Framber Valdez has been a mainstay for years now. So I like the pitcher a lot. I would try to hold on, but if you have multiple guys hurt, if you have, you're waiting on a Zach Eflin, you're waiting on some of these other names, Pablo Lopez, I think Arrighetti's probably the lowest of that list right now. So if you have multiple injuries, then I could see dropping someone like Arrighetti just out of necessity in an NFBC league.
Yeah, 100% agree. That's where I'm at. It's definitely team dependent, but if he's your one stash, sure, go for it. As injuries build up, though, he's a harder one to hold on to, because I agree the skill set is very, very good. Love what we saw towards the end of last year, but June's a long ways away in the fantasy baseball world. All right, let's talk about it. Everyone likes to overreact this time of year. We are included in that conversation. That is just how the name of the game we play. So I brought Frank on, like I said earlier in the show. Let's talk about some hitters that are struggling. Let's look at guys we can be optimistic about. Let's look at some positives maybe, or just like simply to say, hey, relax, we're going to be okay. Or maybe there's something that looks a little concerning. That's always a thing too, because sometimes you need to know when to jump ship early on, and that could be a plus as well. I think most will be just relaxed situations, but we shall see here. We'll start off with Washington Nationals outfielder Dylan Cruz. A lot of high expectations entering the year, Frank. Some power, ton of speed, hit for a decent average throughout the minors, but off to an extremely slow start. 3 steals, no homers, hitting a $128 as he entered Thursday. 39% strikeout rate. That's the one that stands out to me in this one. Where are you at on a Dylan Cruz? Is it growing pains, or is there maybe something more to this?
I think it's mostly growing pains, and I do kind of want to calibrate the panic meter before we start, because 10 being obviously like I can't be more worried about this player, and you're probably bordering on like dropping a player who's a 10 on this list, and 1 or 0, whatever it might be. Obviously, like no concerns at all. This player is going to be fine. Like not worried about it. Dylan Cruz, I think, is somewhere in the middle right now. Like, I think I would give him like a 5 or a 6. He's hitting 128. He does have 3 steals early on. 39% strikeout rate is disastrous. He's chasing more. The zone contact is down. Swinging strike rate is up so far. He's also hitting way too many ground balls, which was a problem for him last season. 52% ground ball rate. I was starting to get encouraged because he had a 5 or 6 game stretch where he only struck out 3 times. And I'm like, okay, strikeouts are coming down. That's really what we need to see. And then he had 3 more strikeouts on Wednesday. So I was like, all right, well, here we go again with Dylan Cruz. I think it's a pretty long leash here. Nationals aren't expected to contend or anything. I think if he's this bad through all of April, then they probably think about, all right, let's send this guy down. He's an important part of our future. We have to get the confidence right. And then he'll be up again at some point. But if you have this guy in a 12-team Roto League or deeper, 12-team categories league, whatever it might be, I'm holding. If you're playing like a shallow points league, 10 or 12 teams, like the free agency, the waiver wire is so good. Like maybe you can justify dropping him. I would personally still hold Dylan Cruz everywhere for now. And I'm kind of at like a 5 or 6, but I think they're going to give him time here to figure it out at least until the end of April. If he's still this bad, then I think they probably reevaluate it and think about sending him down.
Yeah, I think a 5 or 6 is pretty safe here because, 39% strikeout rate can't be ignored. That's a big number and definitely can improve. We've seen James Wood already starting to produce as that slowly improves. He had like a 38%. So it's possible. Maybe it's a Nationals thing. Who knows? But with Cruz, he's hitting at the bottom of the order. They're trying to baby step him. Robert Hassel will be the guy they want to bring up, who's having a nice start to the AAA season, but nothing crazy. But he's got prospect pedigree as well. So I agree. Cruz should have plenty of time to figure this out. It's just how long do the Nationals let this go? Again, they're not really playing for much this year. So that might be a good reason to run wild with them. So I'm not fully panicking either, but there is a little bit that's like, hey, sometimes a young player just needs to get out and clear his head. He's 23 for crying out loud. Like maybe getting out of Washington wouldn't be the worst thing for him right now. Michael Toglia of the Colorado Rockies was such a popular name during draft season, Frank. Everybody wanted all of the power with no batting average and a ton of strikeouts. We're seeing it so far. No home runs through 11 games this season with a 140 batting average, and brace yourself for impact, a 45.7% strikeout rate, which is almost half of his at-bats, folks. Do the quick math on that one. Where are you at on Michael Toglia? Because that is not good.
It is terrible. And some of the underlying stuff too, the zone contact is down to 75%. Swinging strike rate is up to 20%. So even the underlying stuff all lines up with a really, really bad strikeout rate. Now, as of recording this, the Rockies did play on Thursday. He had his first big game, 3 for 4 with a run and an RBI. So nice to see that. And I think with the Rockies players in particular, maybe you have to give them a little bit more time just because I believe this is their first series in Coors Field. So haven't really had a chance to play in Coors Field and kind of reap the benefits of having that, home environment for them to play in. So keep that in mind. Obviously, like Brenton Doyle was struggling early on. Boom, 3 games in Coors. He's back on track. So like these things can flip very quickly. I also think it's relative to your expectations. Like Toglia, while you say, like everyone was excited about the power, a lot of people were, like, he wasn't really a target for me. Like I would pass him over. I would wait for other kind of more boring corner infielders later on. And I get why people did like him. The power last year, he hits the ball hard. It's a great ballpark to hit in, all those things. But the fact that this is a part of his game, this amount of strikeouts, like this many whiffs, this is a real thing for him. And he doesn't have the same level of prospect pedigree as someone like Dylan Cruz. Early on this season, he's putting the ball on the ground, which is not really like him. I do think he has the benefit of playing for a really bad team. It's what do the Rockies have to gain by sending Michael Toglia down? Now, they're the Rockies, and they make stupid decisions all the time, so that wouldn't surprise me. But if they're just thinking long-term, they should just let him play and see what he could do. Like, let him figure it out on the job. Like, I think he's going to stick around with the Rockies. What does that mean for you in fantasy? Well, I don't think you should start him right now, especially like if they have a whole week on the road, like there's no way that I would be playing Michael Toglia right now. And in some of those shallower leagues, I said I would try to hold on to Cruz. If you play in a 10 or 12 team points league, you get penalized for strikeouts and things like that. Like, I think you could drop Michael Toglia. So I have him as a 7. I think this is pretty worrisome early on here, but I'm someone who doesn't really have Michael Toglia. So maybe it's easier for me to say drop him.
Yeah, that's a great point because I was fading him completely as well. I wanted nothing to do with the profile, so it's easy for me to say like I have him at an 8.5 because I don't think they send him down because I just looked at the possible replacements at AAA. It's Keston here and Owen Miller. Like those aren't the answers. But to your point, if they're going to keep letting him play, he's just crushing your fantasy value. Like he might run into 25 to 30 home runs, but the whole thing you and I were off of in preseason, he's proving right now. And that's the problem. So in a 15, there's probably still some corner infield appeal to play when he's in Coors. Not going to deny that. But to your point, I'm glad you hit on that at the end. If you're in a 10-team league, there's got to be a better replacement out there at first base. If you're in a 12-team league, there's still probably a better corner infield option, if not first base. And hopefully, if you drafted Toglia, your corner infield is a first base. You probably hopefully planned accordingly in that regard. Maybe not, but I'm worried about how he's going to affect your team more so than the Rockies getting rid of him. Let's put it that way.
And especially with how many first basemen have emerged here, Bubba, like between
Yep.
Ben Rice and Soderstrom and Torkelson and all these guys that have really gotten off to nice starts. I would say, like, if you have a solid corner infielder on your bench, just bench him for now. If you're in a 12-team Roto League or deeper, like you have the luxury of just benching him and waiting. But yeah, I don't think you actually need to hold on to Michael Toglia either.
Yep, totally agree. Let's go to, I mentioned earlier, Rangers struggling a lot. Let's hit on Macus Semien, a person that a lot of people in draft season were discussing. Hey, look, his ADP is lower. It's been in forever. Maybe there's a reason to that. Who knows? But he is getting older, and he's starting off the year in his first 13 games, hitting 122, one home run, no steals, striking out almost 23% of the time after the last 3 seasons, being at 16.5 or below. What is your level of concern here? Because this one, this could be age catching up. This could be the whole team is stinking. There's a few factors with Semien that stand out to me.
Yeah, so this one I have as a 5. I'm right in the middle, and admittedly, Semien was someone that I am invested in, and I felt like maybe the ADP was a little bit too low, and I was kind of banking on this entire Rangers lineup just bouncing back together. But as you point out, he is a little bit older now. The strikeout rate is up so far this season. It's not egregious, but it is up from where it normally is. The line drive rate is down. He's still pulling the ball, still hitting the ball hard. The average exit velocity is actually up this year compared to last year. People who look at bat speed metrics are probably going to freak out because the bat speed is in the 8th percentile right now, which on its own is scary. But if you look at Macus Semien, the 3 years that we have of bat tracking or bat speed metrics, he's been 15th percentile or lower all 3 years. So he's someone who typically does not have fast bat speed, and he was still a really, really productive player back in 2023. Last year took the step back. And I think that kind of factors in as well because, coming off the down year, you want someone to get off to a good start if they're coming off a bad season. And so far that has not been the case for Macus Semien. So strikeouts being up, age, the fact that he was bad last year and he's bad so far this year, I'm going to put this right in the middle at a 5, but I can see it going kind of either way. Like, he has the track record where I wouldn't be surprised if he bounces back. He's also older, so I would not be surprised if he continues to struggle here as well. So I'll put it right smack in the middle at a 5.
Yeah, I think 5 or 6 is pretty fair because, again, similar to these previous guys, I don't really see them. They can't ship them off. Let's put it that way. Like, they can't. They have to trade them or DFA them. So that makes it a little trickier. They can move them down the order. They can mix and match things. I think he'll be better than this, but I also don't know if we're ever going to see that ceiling again. And they're going to give him more days off. So that's just something else to monitor with Semien. With all the other injuries, though, they maybe can't because Josh Smith was one of those guys to give him days off, and that's not happening right now. All right, everyone, just so you know, I'm not a complete homer. I put a giant on the list here. Willy Adames checks the boxes here. And I brought this up because everyone had to tell me, hey, he's changing ballparks, Bubba. He's not going to be that good this year. And I was like, okay, I get it. The ballpark does stink. And I agree his numbers last year were insane. But he's also going to be a serviceable ball player was my thought. And, so far, not so good. But to me, the underlying metrics are close to where it's been in the past. There's a few things that are different, ground ball rates, barrel rates, whatever. But what's your thoughts on Willy Adames? Like, I think this is just a guy starting off slow personally, but I guess some might say I'm biased.
Yeah, it's definitely a slow start. I think this is kind of relative to your expectations, right? Like, if you were expecting him to come anywhere close to what he did last year, then obviously you're disappointed either way, but you might be even more worried or more panicked here on a Willy Adames. I have him at a 4 just because I expected him to be worse this season. I thought the projections captured him pretty well, like a 240-ish hitter, mid-20s home runs, maybe 8 to 10 steals, pretty good counting stats. I still think that he can get to those numbers. He doesn't look like he's going to get there as of now, but again, it's still so early on in the season. He's walking less, he's striking out more, the chase rate has jumped back up a little bit. Some things in the plate discipline are worrisome, but it's such a small sample size, and he's actually hitting the ball harder than last season. He's just, the ground ball rate is up, as you mentioned here. And I think it's going to take some time. Look, it's first year, big contract, new location. I typically just blanket fade these players who get that big contract. They're in a new spot, especially when they're coming off of a career year. So I don't have any Willy Adames, but I would still bet on him getting close to those projections, those preseason projections, by the end of the year. So I'm not overly freaking out. I have Willy Adames at a 4 right now.
Yeah, I have him at 3. Like I'm totally fine with Willy. It goes to your point. My expectations weren't as high as apparently other people's were, because it was just being realistic. You said the projections, when he got traded, projections came down, I think, appropriately. Where he was getting drafted, there's like the elite tier. Then there's Willy, and then there's the next group. And that seemed kind of fair when you're looking at the way it worked out. And so it came down to expectations, which in reality probably is how all of these should be prefaced, is expectations. But I completely agree with you on Adames. I'm not overly concerned yet. And a lot of it, to your point, is it's a new team, all that stuff, the money. He's in every ad the Giants do right now. He's on every poster the Giants do. Like, they put a lot on him because they paid him, and it's a whole new world for him. So you can I want to give him the grain of salt, a little slack on this one, but again, I'm a Giants fan. Frank in the chat here says, I traded Bellinger for Adames. What does a Giants fan and a Yankees fan think?
Ooh, both are off to bad starts. I guess you could say something similar for Bellinger. It's just a kind of a weird start for Bellinger. He dealt with some back stuff. He ate some bad wings the other day. So I don't know. It's been like a weird start to the season for Cody Bellinger. I think in a vacuum, I would still rather have Bellinger, and maybe that's my bias, but I have him ranked higher. I had him ranked higher than Adames coming into the season. So not enough has changed for me to kind of flip those things around. I would rather have Bellinger in a vacuum, but I don't know. I could be wrong. What do you think?
No, I'm with you. I'd rather have Bellinger as well. I think Bellinger's got the power potential. He's going to be in a lineup that on paper should score a ton more runs, which he should be a part of in the middle of that order. And he'll run probably similar to Adames, so that's probably a wash. So I would lean Bellinger as well on that one. All right, I almost took this player off the list, but this was actually a good one to keep on because it showcases how quick things can change on April 10th as we start to panic about things. And that is Taylor Ward, who even through his struggles, he entered Thursday hitting 196 with 1 home run over the first 50 plate appearances, but was only striking out 16%. That would have been a career low if we would have finished the season here, Frank. And then he just happened to hit 2 home runs while going 3 for 5 on Thursday in Tampa Bay's AAA affiliated Yankees Stadium that I like to make fun of as I do it. But Taylor Ward, I think, will be just fine. This is who he is. But I just wanted to leave him here. Do you have anything else on Taylor Ward?
Yeah, I had him at a 2 even before this game, to be honest, and the 2-homer game. And this is kind of just who Taylor Ward is. He's been very streaky the past couple of years. He's not for the faint of heart. He's someone that you just leave in the lineup. And by the end of the season, you're going to get your 25-ish home runs and 6 to 8 steals, okay batting average. The Angels like him. Like, he's going to play every day. I will say the only reason I don't have this a 1 or a 0, I have it a 2, is because I think there's a little bit more competition on the Angels roster this year compared to previous years, where they have a Soler. Mike Trout is healthy for now. They have Joe Adell, who also hit 2 home runs on Thursday. Kyron Paris is emerging now, and he can play the outfield. So there's a little bit more pressure where if Taylor Ward goes through one of these like month-long extended slumps, maybe he starts to lose playing time. But I just think he's a guy that when you look up at the end of the season, the numbers are going to be there. You just kind of have to like ride the waves with him. So it's a 2 for me on Taylor Ward.
Yep, 0 concerns, 1, 2, whatever you want to go with. I'm fully supportive on this one because as long as he's healthy, he's in there every day, top of the order. You're going to get 255-ish guy with 20-plus home runs and probably 10-plus stolen bases. So you're totally fine with that. Now, similar to Michael Toglia, Triston Casas is someone that had high expectations for some, other people just not involved at his ADP this draft season. Triston Casas is off to a slow start this year, entering Thursday, hitting 163 with 1 home run over the first 12 games of the season, while striking out over 30% of the time, Frank. I was probably one of those that's a little more concerned about Casas, just because I believe the skills are great, but I haven't seen him do it yet, is kind of my concern. So as someone, as a Yankees fan that probably watches a lot of Red Sox because they play each other a lot, what are your thoughts, given he's been injured most of the time, but what's your thoughts on Casas?
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned here. I had this at a 5 on Triston Casas because he struggled with strikeouts last year, and it wasn't just after the injury when he came back from that rib cage injury. He struggled with the strikeouts even before that. So I kind of wanted to give him a pass because, the plate discipline was so much better before that and in the previous years and all that. But the fact that he's striking out as much as he is early on, he's kind of picking up where he left off last year. So I don't love that aspect. There's not a huge track record to speak of outside of a huge second half in 2023. We really don't have much here with Triston Casas outside of prospect pedigree. Like, he was a huge prospect and they're expecting big things. He's batting in the middle of one of the best lineups in baseball. So I still like the context and everything for Triston Casas. Quality of contact is way down early on in the season. So that, in conjunction with the plate discipline, I'm not worried, but I'm not worried. So that's why I have it right in the middle here at a 5. I do think the leash is going to be pretty long here with the Red Sox. Their lineup is so deep, they can afford to wait on him, and maybe he gets moved down the lineup. Maybe he sits out against some tough lefties here or there, and especially the longer that this lasts. If we get a month or two into the season, the Red Sox could start to make some decisions. Obviously, they have guys at AAA that are waiting to get called up. It doesn't work out perfectly because he plays first base, but maybe they can put Devers at first and DH someone else. And like, if Roman Anthony's ready, maybe they just call him up, and Triston Casas loses playing time as a result of that. But I do think the leash is going to be pretty long here. I have Triston Casas at a 5.
Yeah, I'd have been a 6. Similar thoughts to you. It's just kind of, he's going to get all the chances he can. Devers could eventually play there. The things I'm concerned about as a young player, like, how's his mental status when they try to trade him all off season? Like, do they really want me there type situation? We all know that they got Bregman. They were rumored to putting Devers at first already before Devers went to DH. They want Roman Anthony, of all the things you mentioned. So it's there's got to maybe be some of that press. He's pressing potentially. The power's undeniable, but just putting it together for a full season is the major question when it comes to Casas. So I'm not as concerned of that they'll demote him, I guess, but I am concerned that either losing playing time or he's going to struggle a lot, where it's going to be tough to roster that. Like, he's a bench right now for the most part, unless you don't have another option.
Yeah, and I do think once you start to see the Red Sox move him down the lineup or sit him against tough lefties, that's when I would start to worry even more about this. The fact that they're still playing him, he's batting cleanup today. Like, as long as he's in there every day and they're letting him figure it out, I'm not that concerned. But the moment that, he starts to lose some playing time or maybe drop down the lineup a little bit, that would probably go up to like maybe a 7 or 8 on this panic meter.
It's a great point, because it's like the opposite of Ben Rice, who hit second versus Tarek Skubal on Wednesday. It's like, that's called confidence, folks. That's a complete opposite situation. And the grin on your face showcased everything we need to know about that situation.
Yeah. Ben Rice has been awesome so far. And it's just, he's hitting the ball hard. He's got great plate discipline, and he's playing against some lefties here. He's leading off against righties too. So there is a lot to like about Ben Rice. And I'm not dropping Triston Casas, but if you want to bench him for Ben Rice right now, I have no problem with that. Like, that, I think it's totally fine. Yeah.
Agreed. All right, let's go to a player that's always been a guy I just avoid because I can't understand what's going on here. He seems like a better real life than fantasy player, but smart people have told me I'm wrong. That's Alec Bohm of the Philadelphia Phillies. Usually hits like 270 to 280, hits like 15 home runs, drives in a ton of bases, RBIs, but nothing like earth-shattering. This season, it's much worse to start out. Over the first 10 games, hitting 178, no homers, no steals, 21.7% K rate, which would be his worst since 2021. Where are you at on Alec Bohm, who was actually moved down to 7th in the lineup today?
I'm not concerned. I have this one at a 2, and I understand he's not a sexy player. He's not exciting, but he's someone that you look up at the end of the season. It's a good batting average. It's 15 to 20 homers. The counting stats are going to be there, and I would still bank on Alec Bohm providing those numbers throughout the course of the season. He's walking less this year. He's striking out more, 22% strikeout rate. It was at 14% last year. He's also chasing a lot early on in the season. So something to watch, but he's also hitting the ball really hard. 93 mile per hour average exit velocity. It's just a lot of ground balls, 51%. So I think that's kind of, hurt some of the batting average and his ability to get on base and hit for power early on here in the season. One thing else I think we should mention is the weather too. And the fact that a lot of these teams that play like NFC East or teams that play in the middle part of like AL, NL Central, we're going to talk about some AL Central hitters coming up. It is so cold in these games right now. It's like 30, 40 degrees. It's just not good baseball conditions. And we see this every year where offense is down in April and it typically goes up as the weather gets warmer around baseball. So I wanted to throw that caveat in there for some of the teams playing in the Northeast and middle parts of the country and things like that. The only reason I don't have this again as like a 0 or 1, I have it as a 2, is similar to something you brought up for Triston Casas. Bohm was subject to trade rumors all offseason. So maybe that's something that is weighing on his mind a little bit. And that's the only reason why I have this at 2. Otherwise, I'm really not concerned at all.
Yeah, I guess this is one kind of a biasy pick, like the Toglia for me, where I was just off of Bohm. I have him at a 3 just for the fact that I kept saying if he doesn't hit 275 to 280 and he doesn't drive in the 90-plus RBIs, he's pretty much not going to give you the fantasy value you'd hope for at third base. So, again, it's an early start. You mentioned the quality of contact metrics. That supports things will be okay, which is a plus. I'm just always a little skeptical with Alec Bohm, if anything, because he's striking out more and maybe he's pressing, to your point about the trades. That could be something as well. All right, let's go back to Texas, a guy that I absolutely loved heading into this draft season at his ADP, and maybe he got bamboozled or he's just it's early. Jake Burger. Texas Rangers as a team are struggling. Jake Burger is struggling a ton as well. Coming in to the weekend here, he's hitting 119 with 2 home runs on the season, but 22% K rate, 23% K rate is actually kind of promising, all things considered, with Jake Burger. But as a whole, the production has been down. And like I said, like a broken record, the team's production has been down. So thoughts on Burger?
So I have him at a 4. And I actually had Burger as a fade coming into the season, which is crazy because I loved him last year when he was on the Marlins and now he's on the Rangers, which was a much better team, much better context in general here. I'm not overly concerned about it because he's not struggling in the ways that I thought that he would, right? He's not striking out a crazy amount. It's really just his batted ball data is all out of whack right now. So only a 6% line drive rate, 50% ground ball rate. So if you're not hitting line drives, you're not going to hit for batting average. If you're putting the ball on the ground as like a bigger, burlier dude, like it's just not going to result in hits for Jake Burger. So he's still hitting the ball hard. The barrel rate is still there. Got off to a really slow start last year. This was my concern with Jake Burger is he's really streaky, got off to the slow start with the Marlins last season, really did not pick things up until the end of June, early July. He was afforded that time to wait because he was on a bad team. He's not on a bad team anymore. He's on a team that's expected to compete. So if he struggles for a month or two, does he start to lose playing time? Do they start to use Jock Peterson at first base, something that they were doing back in spring training? So that was part of my concern. But the fact that it's not really the strikeouts that's affecting him, I still feel like Jake Burger is going to get back on track here. So I have him at a 4. I'm a little bit worried, but not too much at this point.
Yeah, I'm, again, biased here because I was all in on Burger, but I have him at a 2. Not worried just for the fact that it's the slow start. The increase in strikeouts is a plus. Obviously, he needs to elevate the ball more to be productive for Jake Burger, but he's just one of those Mr. Consistency. He's the current version of Chris Davis with the power, with the average. Like, he just does it year after year after year right now, and he's actually on the best team he's been on in a long time, probably his entire career. So I'm looking for a nice bounce back. Once this team gets clicking, it's going to be scary, and a lot of these guys are going to start producing. So I expect Burger to be just fine, but to your point, Jock Jams could get pushed over there if everyone gets back healthy and they have some other options.
Burger is a guy like Taylor Ward, though. I'll just throw that out where, again, it's streaky. Last year it was the first 2.5 months of the season. He was really, really bad. So he's kind of someone you have to ride the wave. As soon as you bench Jake Burger, he's going to have like a 4-homer week. So it's just, it's tough to stick with him, but he's more so a better player for Roto where you just kind of leave him in there. And by the end of the season, you hope it's Jake Burger numbers, close to 30 homers, good counting stats, and a batting average that doesn't kill you.
Yep, just hope the back of the baseball card shows up. Max Muncy, Los Angeles Dodgers. Max Muncy. I could add both of them on here if I wanted to, But we'll go with the Dodgers Max Muncy because this is one that people are still starting on a regular basis. Hitting 174 for the first 13 games with 0 home runs. You don't expect speed from him, but 0 home runs and a near 43% strikeout rate. Swinging strike of almost 14%, the worst of his career. I've been fading him for a couple years, waiting, like kind of seeing potentially this coming for a little bit, but it's really bad right now, Frank.
Yeah, this one I'm actually a little bit more concerned about. I have Max Muncy at a 6 here, and I'm with you. He's someone that I was fading and just being more batting average conscious the past couple of years and not wanting to roster someone who's going to hit in the 200 to 220 range. So Max Muncy was almost completely off my board outside of, OBP leagues or points leagues where, plate discipline matters. But speaking of plate discipline, it hasn't been good. It's been actually really bad. A 43% strikeout rate, and he's chasing more. The zone contact is down so far. The swinging strike rate is up. He's still hitting the ball hard. He's hitting lots of line drives, which is a good sign. The barrel rate is there. I think that the Dodgers will give him a pretty long leash here just because he's been through so much with them, and they obviously have an affinity for Max Muncy. But, if we're thinking about the long haul here, the Dodgers want to win. And at some point, if he's not producing, they have other options. Now, they're not great options. It's, the Kike Hernandez's and Miguel Rojas, and maybe they bring up they call up a Hai-Sung Kim, someone like that, and they kind of move things around that way. So they have options. They're not great options that they can put at third base, but I am a little bit worried about this for the strikeouts being a big part of it, and the fact that they're not really invested long-term anymore. They have a team option for him after the season, and if it goes poorly, like, they can just start to bench him, and then they could just be done with it at the end of the season. So, I'm a little bit more worried about this one. I have Max Muncy at a 6.
I have him at 8 for what he's going to do to your team. Plus, the Dodgers, they don't really care about money right now. So if it comes to a point where it's bad, I'd be shocked if they DFA'd him. But at the same time, they could. They wouldn't be scared to lose the money for a season. Like you said, it's a club option. Like, they don't care. I could also see them walking into Max and being like, hey, we appreciate all you've done. Your hamstrings hurt. Sound good? Like, that's kind of how we're gonna play this one out for a little bit, buddy. Go figure it out on the side. We'll see. But they have some options. I'm just more worried. Like, what I started looking at this a year or so ago. He's getting worse and worse and worse versus left-handed pitching, like really bad. Especially just he's making contact still, but the production is just going down dramatically. So I could see a platoon starting to take place at some point in time where with Max Muncy, let alone much more loss in playing time. So I would be nervous. I wouldn't have rostered him in the first place, to be fair, but because that batting average was never going to get better. But I would be very nervous.
One other thing on Muncy I want to mention is, and I heard this on one of their broadcasts, is that he started using a torpedo bat, which obviously has been the talk of the baseball world. But it only works, to what I've learned, it only works if you do it the right way. And you have to get the bat tailored to your swing in particular, which that's what a lot of the Yankees players did in the offseason. They found out that, Anthony Volpe gets jammed a lot. So they, moved the barrel down a little bit, and they put a big chunk of the wood where he specifically hits the ball a lot. Now, Max Muncy saw this, and I'm sure other players did as well. And he just ordered a torpedo bat. And he said, give me an average of what all the other players have done with their torpedo bat so far. That's not how it works. You have to get this bat made to your swing in particular. And the fact that Muncy's like, well, a regular bat's not working. Let me just try this torpedo bat. That's almost even more worrisome, right? Like, He's searching for answers right now, and he's turning to a torpedo bat, which, again, you have to do it the right way. Like, you have to go through the process of getting it made and tailored to your swing. And it sounds like Max Muncy did not do that. So I'm not sure it's going to work. In fact, I would bet on it not working for him.
Yeah, that's a great point. Cause I remember watching the first game he had it. I guess they interviewed him during batting practice when he used it for the first time. Like, just, maybe you use it a couple of times to keep your normal bat until you're comfortable with it, type thing, to your point that you're making. And I remember he flat out said, yeah, it feels weird. It feels weird, but something along the lines of, I'll only get used to it if I use it. And just, that doesn't make you feel great. That's awesome. So yeah, he's 34, gonna be 35. Like, it's towards the end, and he's trying to hang around right now. Anthony Santander, this could fall in line with like the Adamises of the world, maybe even Burgers. Like, hey, these guys got paid. Let's see what we can do in that regard. But Santander is off to a 184 batting average without a home run or a steal so far this season, but walking a ton, not striking out a crazy amount, a little high for him, but not a crazy amount. I'm overly not too concerned with Santander just yet, but where do you stand here?
Yeah, it's the same for me. I have him at a 3. The biggest thing that I notice right now is the fly ball rate is way down. It's gone from 55% to 34%. He's hitting more line drives, more ground balls, still pulling the ball hard, still hitting it very hard as well. I just hope it's not the Blue Jays trying to change him in any way, because that would be annoying. Like, just let him be who he is and spam fly balls, and the home runs will come. But so far, the batted ball data has been off. That's really the only thing that stands out for me. He's another one where wasn't a target for me. It's first year of a new contract, new location, and coming off the career year. Not that the ADP was egregious, it was around 100. But yeah, I just didn't wind up with Anthony Santander anywhere. I would bet on the track record. He's pretty consistent. The Blue Jays are invested in him, so he's going to play. So I have Anthony Santander at a 3. I'm not overly concerned here.
Yeah, I have him at a 3 as well, where I think he'll figure it out. Like you said, the only thing that could scare me is if the Jays are trying to tweak him, which would be bizarre. But otherwise, I'm fine. This team, Vlad still doesn't have a home run yet. That's how crazy this Jays situation is. So not too worried there. Talk of the New York area, you probably hear a lot if you listen to local radio or news or whatever, is Mark Vientos and that consistent struggle to the season that he's having, a 119 average, no homers, walking a good amount though, and not striking out a lot, like down at 18.4%. So is the less aggressiveness a bad thing? Conversations probably already coming up, and rightfully so with some of these guys. Where do you sit on Mark Vientos?
So I have Vientos at a 4, and it's very similar to Berger. Like, I was fading Vientos, didn't have him this season, and he's off to a bad start. So, I could say, oh, look at me, I was right about Mark Vientos, but he's not struggling in the ways that I thought he was going to struggle. It's not like he's striking out a crazy amount. Like, the problem that I had with Vientos coming into the season is in the second half last year, the strikeout rate was over 30%. I mean, despite having a great season, and he really did, and a really strong postseason, the strikeouts were a big problem for him. That hasn't been the problem for Mark Vientos so far. He's actually walking more. He's striking out less. I think there is something to what you're saying. I think he's being a little bit too passive right now. I think he's being maybe too selective on the pitches that he's trying to get, and he's just not swinging at the pitches that he should. And I think he needs to be more aggressive and just be himself. And if that means the strikeout rate rises, but we get more power, like, okay, yeah, we'll take that trade-off here for Vientos, who currently has 0 home runs. So, we do need to see something at some point. He's got a 152 BABIP so far after a 324 mark last year. He's not hitting the ball as hard. Average exit velocity, barrels are down. So again, that kind of goes hand in hand, where I think maybe he's being more selective. He's trying to make more contact, and maybe he's not hitting the ball as hard early on. Screw that. Be you. Go back to being who you were. Be more aggressive. Even if there's more strikeouts, we'll take more hard contact, and hopefully the home runs will come here. But I'm a little bit concerned about Vientos just because he's not very proven, but I have it at a 4 just because it's not like the strikeout rate is crazy right now.
Yeah, I have him at a 6. If he tweaks back to being more aggressive, like, I'm with you. I'll take the strikeouts because I think he does legit have 30-plus home run power. I think we can all agree on that. It's just what's it come with. And right now it seems like he's just way too patient. He needs to go talk to Pete Alonso and hang out for a bit and learn how this is how we hit ball hard and often type situation. So I'm just worried in that regard. I say 6 because, yes, Brett Beatty's there. I don't think Brett Beatty's any good, but that's just me. So Vientos should have a very long leash. It just comes down to how long do they want to let it go for. Christian Encarnacion Strand, CES, known to many, is for now kind of healthy, it seems. Hitting 174, does have 2 home runs, which is a plus. Strikeout rate's down to 22%. Swinging strike rate is pretty close. A lot of ground balls, chasing like crazy. Where are you at on CES?
This is probably the player that I'm most concerned about, and I have him at an 8. So the highest number that I've mentioned yet. He's batting 174, does have the 2 home runs, but it's a 530 OPS. Not striking out all that much, but he's just not hitting the ball hard at all. And what worries me about this is that he's coming back from the wrist surgery last year, and it's really hard to, really pin it, to really say if that's exactly what's causing it. But I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if those things are correlated, right? The fact that he has wrist surgery and now the quality of contact is way down, and This is someone who's supposed to provide big power, hit the ball hard, lots of home runs, all that type of thing. And the Reds, as they get healthier, as Spencer Steer gets healthier, they have options that they can put at first base. And as guys start to return, and Tyler Stevenson, okay, maybe they want to DH him here and there along with catching. And so they'll have more options as guys get healthier. And I just wonder if he is completely healthy coming back from that surgery. And maybe that's just speculation on my part, but I think the Reds need to win. I think they want to win. You don't bring in, Tio Francona unless you're expecting to win this season. I don't know that they have this luxury to just wait on a Christian Encarnacion strand. So he's someone I would try to hold in some of the deeper leagues right now. But again, first basemen are emerging. So if you're in a shallower format, I can see swapping someone like Encarnacion strand out for a hotter hitter right now.
Yeah, I'm at like a 6.5. I am concerned. I have some shares. I enjoyed the price tag that came with CES for the power upside. It's a good point with the wrist. Is there lingering situations where he already got hit on it once and missed a game this start the season, which is obviously concerning as well. Great American still not warm yet, so I'll grain of salt with that. But 50% ground ball rate doesn't matter what ballpark you're in. To your point, so I think he can figure it out. I think he can turn it around. The one thing that really concerned me looking at his profile is that O swing. He is chasing a ton out of the zone right now, and you're not going to get very good contact, period, if you're doing that. So that's something that he needs to get figured out and figured out quickly. All right, a couple more here, and then we'll head out of here. Luis Robert, we shouldn't be too concerned, I'll say, but I'll ask what you have to say here. We know he's basically going to play every day as long as he's healthy, but hitting .154, no homers, 3 steals, though, to start the season over the first 11 games.
Yeah, so I have Luis Robert at a 3 here, and he's another one where we wanted him to get off to a good start after the down season last year. I'm just not overly concerned because, as far as I know, he's healthy. And that's like really the battle with Luis Robert is as long as he's healthy, I think he's a really talented player. And he's another one where I've seen a lot of the games that he's in have been really, really cold weather games early on. And I think this is kind of maybe a thing that we don't talk about enough, but I think a lot with like the Latin players, when it's really cold early on in the season, I feel like that could affect them even more just because, like, don't get me wrong, he's been here for a long time already. And I think that's more so when players first, get to the majors and things like that. But I think that, Latin players can struggle a little bit more in the colder weather early on in the season. And that's what we've seen so far from Luis Robert, but he's walking more this year. He's striking out a little bit less. Quality of contact is not great so far, but it is still an 11% barrel rate. It's, too many ground balls and infield fly balls. And it's just, I don't know. I'm not overly concerned. I have it at a 3 here. The bigger thing is if it comes out that he's dealing with an injury, then it's like, okay, this skyrockets up to like a 7 or 8 just because he's always hurt. But as far as I know, Luis Robert is healthy. And I do think there is motivation here for him. If he plays well, then he can get traded. Why wouldn't he want to get traded, right? Like, look at this White Sox lineup they're throwing out there. So if he's healthy and he plays well, I think he will be traded at some point this season. And I think that is motivation enough for Luis Robert to have a pretty good season when all things are said and done.
Yeah, I have him at a 2. Similar reason. Like, if he's healthy, for all we know, and a healthy Lou Bob, even if he hits 240, he can hit 25 to 30 home runs and still get 15-plus bases. Like, he's a very, very talented player, even on a bad team. County stats will stink, but nothing we can do about that. Hopefully he gets traded if he stays healthy. So I agree with everything. If he was hurt, I'd probably say drop him. I want nothing because we've seen that hurt back, doesn't go on the IL. It's all over the place. That's a mess. But as long as he's healthy, we ride. Carlos Correa, talking about healthy. He's only 30, which is crazy to think he's been playing in baseball forever. 163 average, no homers, no steals through the first 12 games for the Twins. Went 0 for 4 on Thursday. To add to that, now hitting a .149 on the season. Where you at on Correa? Because again, similar to Lou, he's healthy for all we know, but this is bad.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's basically insert Luis Robert analysis here. I have Correa at a 3. Obviously, it's a really bad start, and you'd rather him not get off to a bad start, but the plate discipline looks fine early on. The biggest thing that stands out is that he's hitting way too many ground balls, 58% ground ball rate, but still hitting the ball hard. As far as I know, he's healthy for now. It's hard to say because it's like the plantar fasciitis is something that can pop up at any point. And I think for what you invested in Carlos Correa, he was going much later than a Luis Robert. The moment an injury pops up or if that plantar fasciitis pops up, like he's a drop. you could just drop him. But as long as he's healthy, I still think he's a productive player, right? It's an OPS over 830, I believe, 2 of the past 3 years. And when he's on the field, he's still been a really productive player. And I would still bank on that talent being there. He's not really old or anything like that. So in the prime of his career, he's healthy now. I have Carlos Correa at a 3.
Yep, I had him at 2, similar to the Lou Bob stuff, like you said. Just if he's healthy, he'll end up hitting his 270, 280, hit you close to 20 homers and go from there. So no problems with him at all. Last one I have is Lane Thomas. This one can be kind of complicated if you want to make it complicated, but hitting 167, no homers, 1 steal, only 8 games. He got hit on the wrist. He's missed about 3 games now. With that, they say he's fine. He's missed 3 games. I bring this up because he had a good spring. He had a good postseason. But when he came over to Cleveland, he was basically platooning by the end of the season. So he's sitting versus right-handed pitching, which was a concern. So I kind of had him off my draft board. Again, had a good spring, off to a rough start. Where are you at on Lane Thomas?
You mentioned the word complicated there, Bubba. I think that is a really good word for Lane Thomas, who last year after getting traded, he was just abysmal right away, then got better in September. He was better in the postseason, had the nice spring training. What it comes down to here, and I hate to say this because, like, who am I? I'm a guy sitting behind a microphone talking about a fake sport, but I just don't think Lane Thomas is that great of an actual hitter in baseball. Like, I think he's fine. I think he does some nice things and he gets the most out of his skill set. He pulls fly balls and things like that. And why we like him for fantasy is that he steals bases. I don't think he's really that great of a hitter at his core. Now he can do things for fantasy, someone that can, he can go 20-20 and all those types of things. But yeah, I look at the underlying profile. I think he is a complicated player to figure out. So I have him at a 5. I could see ways where this can go wrong, where if he's in an extended slump, maybe he turns into a short platoon player. And we heard talks this offseason that, like, the Guardians were trying to trade Lane Thomas. So it's like, how invested are they even in Lane Thomas? And they have some outfield prospects and things like that. So yeah, he is a complicated player. I think in 5 outfielder leagues, you have to hold on just because he does have that 2020 potential. But, if you're playing any shallower 3 outfielder leagues, like, yeah, I think you can go ahead and move on from Lane Thomas. And if he gets hot, you pick him back up. But I don't think he's someone you need to just continue to roster in a shallower format like that.
I agree. Not even close to an auto start for me. I've been a 6. And it could get worse if they start platooning him, but we'll have to wait and see. They need to get healthy before they probably do that. A couple questions before we head out of here. I got one here in the chat I want to bring up. Frank says, I drafted 5 Phillies in my first NFBC auction: Realmuto, Stott, Turner, Casti, and Marsh. Moving forwards, what are your thoughts on taking so many hitters from the same team? It was not part of his plan.
Yeah, it's hard because once you're in the draft, you almost kind of lose track of some of the players that are on your team and you just go for the best values. And if it turns out that, hey, all these Phillies players are falling, or for whatever reason they turn out to be the best values, then you can kind of lose track of it. And I think in the long haul for the Phillies, I think their lineup is still going to be really good. Like, we'll look up at the end of the season, they'll be top 10 in scoring. They'll be a good offense all around. And a lot of those players you talked about, I still have faith in them getting on track. The Castellanoses and Trey Turner and JT Realmuto and guys like that. So I think it'll be fine. I think ideally, I probably don't want to have more than like 3 players on the same team. So 5 could be a little bit excessive here. And I think it's probably something you should pay attention to moving forward. But if you just look at those players on an individual basis, I would bet on a lot of them getting on track here for the Phillies.
Yeah, in Roto, it's not as bad. I still wouldn't want to do it head-to-head. It can kill you. If the whole team slumps like the Rangers are right now, you think you're rolling in looking good, and
right.
Yeah, you're drowning right about now. So that's a rough one. Just want to shout out BP at Futures_Bet. He asked about Alec Bohm. We hit on him because he was already on the agenda. So got that one covered for him. But as we wrap up, Frank, I think the moral of the story is it's early, it's cold, it's a lot of things. As long as everyone's healthy, I'm going to keep rolling. So any final thoughts before we wrap up our hitting panic meter?
No, I think that's a really, really good reminder. And just tell yourself that players can have like a bad month or 2 and they could still have a really good season. It's just so long. It's a 6-month season. So just remind yourself and, try and stick with the early round players that you took that get off to bad starts. Corbin Carroll last year had, the bad first 2-3 months of the season and still wound up with a very respectable line, and obviously has picked things up here to start this season. But that's just an example of, yes, early to mid round players can have a bad month or two and still have a really, really good season. Maybe you take advantage when other people drop those players, right? And I forgot, I was listening to a podcast somewhere where there was like a really smart NFBC player talking about how someone dropped Jackson Trio in like their online championship last year in June because he got off to the terrible start, and they picked him up and he was just a godsend from that point forward. And so pay attention to players who are being dropped and things like that. And maybe you could take advantage of it, but I would try and preach patience as much as possible because it is a really, really long season.
Yep, totally agree. I think it was Spore that said it this past week on one of the shows I was listening to that, when we talked about this, Frank, it was basically anywhere from 10 to 14 games. If someone was in a slump, Spore was saying for 10 to 14 games in June, we wouldn't care.
Right.
We wouldn't care at all. So just remember that, folks. We drafted all season. The most exciting part, we're all excited. We still have 5.5 months to go.
And same thing with Rafael Devers, right? Like that to me is the perfect example, is that the start that he got off to was historically bad, right? It was like the most strikeouts ever in the first like 3, 4, 5 games of the season. And boom, he's flipped it flipped the switch like nothing ever happened. And here he is, he's back. And, there are other things, that you could be worried about, like shoulders and stuff. But as far as we know, like the numbers are back on track here and it could flip that quickly. And again, if Devers had an 0 for 20 with like 15 strikeouts in the middle of the season, we probably would notice because that's really bad, but we wouldn't, have freaked out the way that we did to start this season. So again, things can flip really, really quickly this early on.
Totally agree, my friend. Before we head out of here, remind everybody where they can find you and what you got going on.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter, X, @roto_Frank, and you can listen to me on the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast. We usually go very late. We go live very late at night. So for you, Bubba, and those on the West Coast, it's much easier to catch us live, but it's around 12:30 a.m. Eastern time. And then you do have a podcast in your feed every Monday through Friday. We have a shorter podcast as well, Fantasy Baseball Today Express, and that's where you can find me.
Well, everybody probably already checks that out if they're listening to this show. If you're not, make sure you do it. Check out Frank on Twitter @roto_Frank as well. But until next time, thanks for joining me, my friend. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bubba.
All right, this was Bench with Bubba, episode 758. Catch you all next time.